Well, thank you, Dean. I appreciate that introduction. There's always an interesting laugh that comes from the audience when I talk about the 9 kids. So we're going to have to get into that in just a moment. But before we do, I have a question about this opening slide that was intentionally written this way. Who would like to hazard a guess what I believe is the most important thing on this slide? Take a look at the words, and what word in particular? Yes, sir?
Sponsors.
I'm so sorry?
No sponsors.
No sponsors. Do you know why that's written there? Yes?
It implies that you've had sponsors in the past.
It's a great question. The response was, it implies that I've had sponsors in the past. I'm sure I have. But what I think is important to you starting your career is that you are about to embark on a lifetime of lectures and seminars. And many of them are going to be sponsored. So I always find it interesting when I go to a lecture. I was just at a implant seminar in Vegas, and this was the slide that first came up. The speaker has significant interest in the products. Now, if you're sitting in the audience and the person who's lecturing has significant interest in what they're about to say, how do you, as someone who's perhaps new to that information, know what's legitimate, what's not? So I like to start virtually all my lectures telling you that I don't have any sponsors here. The dean was kind enough to fly me out, but I'm not being paid by anybody to be here. So we're going to get to that in a second. So I think we got to talk about the 9 kids briefly, just to get that out of the way, right? So there are going to be times, I assert, in your career where you hear something and you have a certain interpretation of that something. And that's what we call life, right? Something happens, somebody says something. So I could tell you this story. I could tell you that 5 years ago, I decided to do 23andMe to find out my heritage. I wanted to see if my parents lied. Came back boring. Came back exactly what they told me. But then there's a little box that says, do you want to share your DNA? I go, sure. Let me see if I have a cousin I don't know. And 6 kids showed up that I've never heard of before. So I called my wife, and I said, sweetheart, I've got something important to tell me. She goes, great, what's up? I go, I need you to sit down for this. And she goes, I'm sitting, I'm driving. I go, I definitely need you to pull over. And I said, I just got my results back, and I just found out I had 6 kids with 6 different women. Hold on, gets better. During the first 5 years of our marriage. Ooh.
Oh my God.
So that's my wife, right beneath me in the middle, and she doesn't look too upset, does she? Right? And here's the part that goes back to what I just said about there are times that you hear a story and you develop a story behind it. We had an oh my God conversation and so forth. But if I told you that I was a starving dental student and eating ramen for months, and the sperm bank came in to tell us that there was an opportunity to help families procreate, and it paid really well, you might have a very different story. Okay. So I throw that in there because similar to the concept of having a sponsor, there's going to be information that's given to you. There's going to be patients that are going to come in with a certain attitude or a certain story. And I'm going to ask you to think very, very carefully about first putting yourself into their shoes. So whenever an angry patient comes into my practice, my staff goes, man, you're just so chill with them. And I go, you know what? I don't have to wake up next to them. I don't have to procreate with them. I don't have to give them child support. And I don't know what's going on in their life. Like, I just don't know what's going on in their life. And it's something that I'd ask you to consider doing for the rest of your life, not just to be great doctors, but to also be great human beings. So, this is one of my favorite parts, where we're going to talk about where communication lives. So, when somebody's speaking, like myself, and somebody's listening, like hopefully you, where does communication live? Does it live with the speaker, or does it live with the listener? Who wants to take a guess at where that is? Yes, sir?
Listener.
Tell me why you think it's the listener.
If they're not engaged in the conversation, the communication is dead.
Okay. That is a brilliant answer. It happens to be the answer that I believe in. It lives with the listener. So here I am. You don't know me. The dean gave me, granted, a wonderful introduction, which I'm grateful for, but we don't have a relationship, and I fly out in the next day, so won't see you for another year. So I'm always interested in how I could get people excited and staying awake and making notes and not sending text messages and not checking their emails, right? So here's a technique that I've picked up that I really, really, really like. These are Starbucks gift cards. Now, isn't it interesting how, like the audience just changed? And can you read that number? Yeah, some of them are in the $20 range, right? Now, that's the good news, and I got a lot of them. Perhaps the not so good news is that I actually get to decide who I give them to. So, you know, you have to impress me enough. Now, that impression could be as simple as you asking a great question. I'm not really interested in whether it's right or wrong. I'm interested in the engagement, because what I'm really doing, I'm looking for a way to have you all enrolled, eager, excited about actually being here and listening. Maybe a $20 gift card will do it. So I'm buying you, basically. So there are a few things I want to tell you about what the next hour and a half is going to look like. I actually have a promise that I'm going to give to you, which is that this is going to be an extraordinary lecture, that you're going to get information here that I promise you, you have never, ever heard before in the world of business and finance and economics and investment and how to run a successful practice. And if you take just a little of this advice, you will be rich and successful. Wow, right? If at the end of the lecture, you did not get a piece of information out of here that's going to make a profound difference in your life, I will give you an hour of my time, which I charge typically coaching clients $2,000 an hour. I will gift you an hour of my time and coach you on any topic that you want. Got it? Yeah. Okay. So, communication lives with the listener. One of the reasons I think that's a very important conversation to have is that in life, you're going to be dealing with patients. I hope you're dealing with significant relationships, parents, significant others, and so forth, intimate relationships. And if you could remember that communication lives with the listener, hopefully where you'll go with this is you'll need to say to yourself, how can I get this person who's important to me, be it a patient or my spouse, to listen to me in a way that's powerful enough that they'll actually hear what I have to say. So I think about when I'm walking down the streets of New York, or unfortunately sometimes LA, and there's that person that's just talking to themselves, you know, the psychotic out there. They're speaking. Nobody's listening. So I want you to think about that, because the first 2 years of your education, you're going to be spent learning the sciences. And the last 2 years, you're going to be involved in patient care. And we have to remember that those patients have their own story, their own baggage, their own craziness that they bring into it. Who knows what just took place in their life that morning? So I ask you to listen to this lecture in such a way that you'll get a pearl, that you'll get something out of this that makes it worthwhile. By the way, a trivia question. Do you know how many oysters you need to open to get one pearl? 1 in 10,000, right? So hopefully I have less than 10,000 words today and we'll give you something good. So let's talk about taboo. What's taboo? Growing up in my family, at the dinner table, there was no conversation about sex, politics, and money. None. And I'm not going to ask you to contribute who had similar relationships, but I would assume that very few people here had a family where those three topics were widely discussed openly. So I'm not going to be talking about sex and politics, so Dean, you can relax, it's all good. But we are going to be talking about money. And money is a very, very interesting topic. It's rare that at the end of a lecture somebody doesn't come up to me and says, you know, I see you've had success, but that's not why I'm going into dentistry. I'm going into dentistry because I want to give back. I want to take care of patients. And my feeling is that if you want to take care of patients, and if you want to have a family, and if you want to have a roof over your head, and if you want to feed your family, and if you want to be the boss and have employees, you better be profitable. Otherwise, you are out of business. Now, I believe you're very fortunate in that the dean understands that. Do you know how many of the 62 or so dental schools have a course like this? None. Very, very rarely does a dental school have what I believe is the business intellectual ability to understand that if you do not learn business, you cannot stay in business unless you want a job. And I'm not saying that having a job is wrong. If you decide to work for a university, if you decide to work for a DSO, those are large conglomerates that actually hire dentists, and you want to get a paycheck when the taxes have already been taken out, fantastic. But here's a statistic. There are roughly 200,000 dentists in the United States. 80% of the dentists, 80, work for themselves. That makes dentistry one of the most entrepreneurial professions in the country. And if you are not looking at the dollar and breaking it up into sections, or what I like to call percentages, I assert you're going to run into some trouble. So if you're good at budgeting, that's great. But let's take a second for those of us who are not great at budgeting, and many people are not. You get a dollar that comes in. If you're spending more than $1, there's going to be a problem. And if you're spending less than $1, then there's some money left over. I could end the lecture on that note, but we're going to have to go a little bit deeper. But it literally is as simple as that. One of the most brilliant concepts that I heard in the world of business came from a podcast that I am going to highly recommend. It's called the Dentalpreneur Podcast, and it's given by a colleague of mine, Mark Costas. So this is free. There are 1,700 podcasts out there. I've listened to every single one. I could tell you my two favorites, but just Google my name when he interviewed me, and you'll pretty much guess that those are my two favorite. But he has a brilliant concept on how to run a successful practice. And he talks about the percentages of how that dollar should be broken up. So for example, if you know that your supply bill for dentistry should not be over 9%. If you know that your lab bill should not be over 7%, then you can take a look at any point in a given month, you run QuickBooks, and you say, wow, so this month we did $100,000 and the lab bill was $8,000, that's 8%. It went over. Why did it go over? And you keep within that percentages. Once you've learned the percentages, you then have the ability of also putting money aside into profit. So when I heard this concept, I took a look at my supply bill. My supply bill was 15%. It's supposed to be 9%. So I go to my lead assistant, who's in charge of buying supplies. I go, why do we spend so much money on supplies? She goes, there was a special this month. Buy one box of gloves, get another free. So I give her a credit card, I said, just buy supplies. Do you know what happens when you give somebody a credit card without a budget? Yeah? Yeah, it just goes all over the place. So I decided, how can I keep my supplies to a certain percentage? So I said, well, we typically do X number of dollars a month. 8% of that is Y. And I said, here's the credit card, don't go over this amount. And I'm going to look at it every month. And every 3 months, every quarter, I'm going to take a look and I'm going to see whether or not you stayed within those parameters. And if you did, I'm just going to give you an extra $300 cash as a thank you for staying on target. In the last 14 years, how many quarters did she miss getting a bonus? Zero, right? And guess what? I've got plenty of supplies, right? So in one world, it's as simple as that. It requires a budget and accountability and someone to manage and make sure that you're staying within a certain percentage. Side note, one of my favorite business books is called Profit First. Profit First. And I'm going to give you that name and the author at the end. But one of the things that he talks about in Profit First is having many, many different bank accounts. You take all your money, all the income that's coming in, and you put it into what we call the holding account. And periodically in the middle of the month, I do it every week, you could do it at the end of the month, you transfer 30% to an account that's called the tax account, because guess what? Got to pay taxes. You put 10 or 15% into another account called profit. You put 25% into another account that's called paying your employees. The Profit First, you take the 10 or 15%, whatever number you want to play with, and you put it into Profit First, and you learn to live off the other 85% and making bills pay from that 85%. Now, fortunately, I got turned on to that book a long time ago. One of the numbers the dean mentioned was that I've been fortunate enough in my 30-plus years of practice to have about $100 million come through my hands. What's 10% of $100 million? It's $10 million. So when I take a look at my profit account, there's $10 million in that account. And fortunately, and I'm going to be touching on this in a minute, where to put that money, like where to invest that money. And fortunately, that money has multiplied. Is there anybody here that does not want millions of dollars in their bank account when they retire? That's the right answer, right? And that has nothing to do with being greedy. That has everything to do with being a smart business person. And although I'm as excited about how much money I've been able to put aside for my family and myself, I'm equally as excited to talk about the 124,000 patients that are unhoused that we've been able to provide free dental care for. That dental care has been valued at $10 million. So I say both of those things in the same sentence because this isn't just about making money just for the sake of making money. I assert that there is no way that you could be philanthropic and there's no way that you could take care of your family if you're not profitable. Is there anybody that wants to argue that with me? Because if it's a strong argument, I will absolutely give you a card. My wife is excluded from that conversation. All right. So, I believe that there are three essential pillars of life. Now, this is my belief. It also happens to be the name of a book that I just completed that's being edited. So unfortunately, you don't get that today, which is why my wife is here with her book. And interestingly, after we both finished our books, we realized how similar they are. And I'm going to bring her up later and talk for a few minutes about those similarities and her expertise. But I believe there are three essential pillars in life. I'm going to share a story with you, one that I'm not overly proud about, but I hope, my intention is that it'll hit home. So I was raised by a stay-at-home mother and a father who had a job down the street from us. It was a local job where he made a wage, but a challenging wage. Not quite minimum wage, but it wasn't quite enough that we had an extravagant lifestyle. My parents bought their house for $18,000. They had a mortgage of about $300, and money was a topic of conversation, or I should say the lack of money was a topic of conversation at my house a lot. So I'm not going to ask anybody to embarrass themselves and say who else had a conversation about being financially strapped growing up. If that's you, I'm sure you could relate to that. So I had a story about money, a very similar story to you, many of you, who heard that I had 9 kids with 7 women, right? There was a story that you had in your mind when you heard that. I had a story that if you make money, there's no fighting. There's no arguing. Life is grand. Now, that's a 5-year-old conversation, right? That was my interpretation growing up, that you just make money. So, I'm going to NYU Dental School. I'm living in the dorms around the corner. There's this smoking hot girl teaching aerobics. She's getting her master's in social work. Ask her out on a date, and next week we'll have our 36th anniversary. So, she's getting her master's in social work. Her orientation is around the family unit, right? It's a social worker. Her father's a shrink, her mother's a shrink, her sister's a shrink, and her other sister's a shrink. So I marry into a family with 5 shrinks. So I don't have to begin to tell you what Thanksgiving dinner was like, right? Let's eat the turkey. Let's talk about how that turkey must have felt. Nope, not going that way. So I come home, I'm working, I don't know, maybe I'm 8 or 9 years into my practice. I'm building my practice from scratch. I am 92 hours a week at the office. I come home, I want my pipe and slippers and martini. My wife is home bouncing 3 kids, right? The house looks like a tornado went through it. She puts her career on hold so she could be a stay-at-home mom. I just want my feet rubbed, and she goes, I don't think this relationship's gonna work. Like, what? Wait. My story is, I'm going out, I'm working, I'm building this nest egg and trying to find a way to make money and so forth. What are you talking about? Because her point of view on life came from a whole different perspective. It came from the relationship perspective. Now, I don't want to say I knew nothing about relationships, but I knew nothing about relationships. That's just not the way, it wasn't my orientation. I just didn't understand that. So I decided to write a book for a variety of reasons. The first one was that I had an English teacher in 10th grade. I got to tell you this story. This is the best. I guess she wanted to hear who was in the class. So she goes, can you read paragraph 1, paragraph 2, paragraph 3? We're reading it. So he gets to the end of the row, and we read a few pages, and she goes, who wants to tell us what they believe the author is trying to say in this book? Now, I knew I wanted to be a dentist, and I knew I wanted to get into dental school. So I wanted to have good grades, and how do you get good grades? You participate. I raised my hand. I gave the literal translation of the book. Well, apparently, the teacher thought the author was being facetious, which means my answer was the wrong answer. Let's go back to that point of view, right? Her comment in front of the entire class was, Grossman, you will never amount to anything. Huh. So everybody laughs, including Myra. Love Myra, couldn't get her attention, and now she thinks I'm an idiot. Years later, the comedian Rodney Dangerfield. You can remember Rodney Dangerfield? Am I that old that they don't know who Rodney Dangerfield is? Damn. He had a movie come out called Back to School. Here's the 30-second synopsis of the movie. He's a billionaire. His son's barely graduating high school. He finally gets through high school. The father wants the son to go to college. He goes, I'm not going to college. You never went to college. You're super successful. And the father says, it's important that you go to college. If you go to college, I'll go back to college. So they both check into college. Now, Rodney Dangerfield, the dad, does it the way a billionaire does it. He knocks down the dorm walls. He makes it a big party. It's a party every night. He gets people to write his papers. So there's one paper, an English paper, that has to be written. And it was it Isaac Asimov?
Kurt Vonnegut.
Kurt Vonnegut, thank you. So Kurt Vonnegut, famous sci-fi author, he picks up the phone, and Kurt Vonnegut has an actual cameo in the movie, and I'm a huge fan of his. I'm like, oh my God, that's really him. And he goes, hey Kurt, I need you to write a three-page paper on your book, XYZ. He goes, I'm not writing a paper. He goes, I'll give you $10,000 for the paper. Next, there's a knock at the door, here's the paper. So he has a paper written by the author on the author's book, and he gets an F. And the English teacher says, I know you didn't write this, and whoever did clearly has no understanding of what the author was trying to say. I stand up in the movie theater, I go, what? Like, that's my life. Like, that was my life. That was the moment that I realized my English teacher might not have been right. She had a different story. Now, she probably was right, but it doesn't matter. I decided that the breakthrough that I wanted to have, and I just turned 60 last week, so this took me a while to get to, was that I am going to write a book to show my English teacher, who I'm sure is long dead. Considering how many needles I've put in a voodoo doll that looks, I'm sure she's no longer with us. But I decided I'm going to write a book. So what am I going to write a book about? So I come up with this thesis that there are three essential pillars of life. So prosperity, and by the way, I'm just playing with the letter P because pillars, okay, so I came up with three P words, right? So the first one is prosperity. So prosperity deals with finances, money, income. I don't care whether you're a trust fund baby or whether you're working for yourself. You have to, in my opinion, have prosperity, have money be one of the essential pillars of life. Otherwise, you can't feed yourself. So let's talk about another pillar. People. And this is what I've learned being married to a shrink for 36 years. That people deals with your relationships. It deals with communication. It deals with your family. It deals with your significant other. You have to have a strong pillar in your relationships, in your people pillar, to have success in life. And the third pillar is what I call the personal pillar. The personal pillar deals with your personal well-being, which includes your health, your nutrition, your exercise routine, your spirituality. If you're not investing in all three of these pillars, I assert it does not matter how much money you have in the bank, that the entire system would be bankrupt. Now, I heard this when I was sitting in this auditorium 35 years ago. Different flavor, slightly different presentation, but I did not believe it. I also believe that everybody in this room, without an exception, has at some point in their life, and most probably presently, dealing with a struggle, at least a struggle, in one of those pillars. Is there anybody here, don't raise your hand, this is rhetorical, that has no stress about the debt that they're going to have when they graduate? Is there anybody here that has all their relationships flying high at 10 out of 10? All of them. Parents, siblings, significant others. Is there anyone here that's health is just perfect and there's not an ailment that's going on? So I'm working my butt off. I'm making millions of dollars. Thankfully, we've got some great investments. I would give the financial pillar a really high score. I would have, prior to this potential divorce conversation with my wife 20 years ago, I would have given my relationship, my people pillar, I don't know, 1 out of 10. And my personal pillar, my own well-being, my health, my nutrition, I would also give a pretty low score, about 3 out of 10. So things have changed, including I'm driving to work one day, and a car on the freeway is going north in the southbound lane, and I have a head-on collision at 50 miles an hour. So I wake up in the hospital, I'm morphined out, and I'm looking down, like my clothes were cut off and everything, and I see every time I cough, my colon coming out of my stomach. I can't move my neck, my back is broken, my shoulders are dislocated from hanging onto the steering wheel and getting them pulled out. I have 2 vertebrae in my neck replaced, and while they were intubating me, the tube that was intubating me pushed against my tongue and put my tongue between my molars and caused a neuroma. So months after the accident, I'm feeling around my tongue and I feel this large knot. That's a pretty large knot. And I'm pretty sure it's mouth cancer, right? They cut it out and they go, no, it was from the accident, intubation. So they had to cut open my tongue. There were a few nerves there. Right side of my tongue is numb. This is 10 years ago, 8 years ago. And last year, I couldn't feel my toes because the accident also caused disc disruption in the lumbar. So they sliced open my back. So when I do my morning meditation and I take a look at my 3 essential pillars of life, I give myself a grade. And this would be an exercise I would strongly encourage you to take on, whether it's in the way my book is oriented, the 3 essential pillars, or whatever else works for you. But one of the questions that I ask myself every single day is, what grade would I give myself on the financial pillar? And typically, I have a passing grade, 7 out of 10 or higher. Then I say, what would I give myself in the personal pillar? And thankfully, because I married the right person, I typically give myself a very strong grade in my important relationships. And almost without fail, when I get to the personal pillar, and I have to give myself a grade on how I'm feeling, how my body's feeling, and what my exercise routine is like, I think you would all agree that I could present a certain way, but you would not have expected me to have that much hardware, right, in my body. I woke up today, I was an 8 out of 10 on the pain threshold scale. On the pain threshold scale. That's usually like a narcotic that I would want to take. So I had to cause myself to be here, present, and what I promised my wife, I'm going to give the best lecture ever. Because that takes something extraordinary. To take yourself out of what's ever there, the debt, the concern, am I going to pass this class? Am I going to repeat the year? What's it going to mean? What about the relationship with my significant other? I'm thinking about getting married. My wife's upset with whatever's there. Everybody, I want you to hear this, everybody has something on this list that they're struggling with. I did not know that growing up. I thought I was the only person that had parents that had a 20-year-old car and fought about money. I thought I was the only one. And when I learned that everybody has something, and ultimately what it comes down to is who you are being with whatever that issue is, makes the world of difference. So the 3 essential pillars, when the book comes out, I'll make sure you guys all get it.
Jay, can you go ahead and take attendance?
Attendance break.
Are doing great, and you are being awesome, and you are fulfilling on the promise.
Love you.
Anything else you want to?
Great. I'll bring you up soon.
Hi everybody, the code is 2205.
Explain how you reconnected with the kids, how you reconnected with them, brought them all together. I think it'll be fascinating.
Okay.
I can talk about that.
Yeah.
That'd be good.
Okay.
Take it away.
Everybody was asking about the book.
Yeah. Who knows who these 2 gentlemen are? Right, Richard Branson and Warren Buffett. Arguably 2 of the wealthiest people in the world. Now here's why I have their picture up there. These are 2 very, very different philosophies on how to make money. And they're worth billions. That's billions with a B, right? So Richard Branson, last I counted, is involved in over 200 companies. So he believes in what I would call diversification. Whereas Warren Buffett believes in driving one business deep. So I would look at this as vertical income versus horizontal income. So from a vertical standpoint, when you are involved with many, many, many different businesses, if some of them fail, you have others to rely on. However, it takes something to manage that. Whereas Warren Buffett has one company that's worth a ridiculous amount of money, and he goes deep with it. Now, I am not here to tell you what is best. They clearly both work. I happen to be a little more risk adverse, so I'm a big fan of diversification. And that's why last year we filed 12 or 13 tax returns. Lots of businesses. 4 of them are patents. One of them is in dentistry. I've got a patent on a toothpaste. 2 of them are products that passengers use on an airplane. And the other one's a piece of exercise equipment, all over the place. So I believe in diversification. If I could give you one piece of advice, if there's the opportunity to buy the real estate that you're going to have your practice built on, I would definitely suggest doing that. The building that I'm in right now in Brentwood, when I moved in 30 years ago, was worth $3 million. Now it's 40. So can you imagine if you owned a practice, when you sell that practice, if you still own the building, you would still be getting rent. That I would have done differently going back. This is worth a card. What is the most important thing in running a business?
Having a good vision.
Vision's important, but not the most important.
Leadership?
Leadership, very important, not the most important.
Understand people.
Understanding people, very important, not the most important.
Overhead.
Overhead, you're getting close.
What'd she say?
She said profit. Do I want to give it to her for that? She seems really, really nice. All right, I'm going to play with you for a second, okay? I'm actually looking for two words. Profit happens to be the second word. There's a word that I need before profit that is crucial, and I will give you a hint. Profit today, profit tomorrow, profit some days.
Profit growth?
Profit's the second word.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. So profit, if I'm profitable today, but next month I'm not profitable,
Gross profit?
gross profit, it's just profit and gross profit we're going to keep as the same. That's all right, hang in there. You'll get it, because I'm committed to you getting it, okay? But answer me this question. Hold on a sec. If I'm profitable today, I could say I'm profitable. But if next month I'm not profitable, the business isn't working. So I'm looking for a type of profitability that's consistent. The word I was looking for is permanent profitability, but consistent profitability works. Come on up. All right, I'm putting the numbers face down, okay? All right, we're going to see how many friends she has, right? Especially if she gets the $10 or the $20 one. What'd you get?
5.
5, ooh. All right, that means there are more 10s and 20s, so there we go. Who knows what the average profitability is for a dentist in private practice? Yes, sir.
40%.
Oh, I wish it was 40%. Not even on a best day ever can you get 40%. There is not a practice I've ever seen at 40%. Next guess. Yep.
20%?
Nope. 8%. Okay. You're getting close. So, overhead at a general dentist's office runs overhead. This means paying all the bills except for associate dentists. The average overhead is 70%. And an associate makes somewhere between 25 and 30%. How much does that leave over? 5 to 0. What? Wait a second. Let's go through some other statistics. What percentage of businesses, according to the Small Business Association, in the businesses, all businesses, go out of business within the first 10 years? 80%. What percentages of dental offices go out of business in the first 10 years? Less than 1. Wait a second. Hold on. Let's do the math here. Less than 1% of dental offices go out of business. 80% of general businesses go out of business. If you're a bank, who are you going to happily loan money to? Dentists. And they will happily loan $1 million on your signature. Okay, nice. So why is it that they're not profitable? Because I actually believe that most dentists who own their own practice are buying themselves a job. they're able to pay themselves $200,000, which is 4 times the average salary in the United States. Not too shabby. But there's no profit left over. Now, if you play with the numbers that I talked about, and I didn't give you all of them because it's a little early in your career for that, but I promise you it's out there. And especially if you listen to that podcast that I told you about, he talks about this every third podcast. Your staff salaries have to be 25%, your hygiene has to be X, your lab supply needs to be Y. If you follow that, and if you could get your overhead down to 60%, and then you're paying your associates 20 to 25%, you now have 20% left over in profit. My practice does about $3 million a year. 20% of $3 million, $600,000 for not picking up a handpiece. Did you hear that number? And if you pick up a handpiece and you're making $200,000-$300,000, we're approaching $1 million in income. Okay? How does a $400,000 education now look if you're bringing in $1 million a year? A little bit different? Yeah. But you got to know these numbers. If you don't know these numbers, I don't know how you could open up any business. We went out for bagel, lox, and cream cheese because I'm a huge fan, and New York's the only place to get it, right? I could tell you a good bagel, lox, and cream cheese sandwich over a bad one from a mile away. I would not open a deli. I know nothing about delis. Could I educate myself? I'm sure I could. I don't have that interest. But I need to know, what should my percentage of food be based on my gross collect? I would need to know that number. I don't know that number in the deli business. In dentistry also, you have to know these numbers. If you don't know these numbers, you will not be permanently profitable. And if you're not permanently profitable, you will have a tremendous amount of stress. So, financial integrity. I have it that integrity is being whole and complete and understanding your numbers. So back to that original example I gave you. If you're not profitable, there's either too much money going out or not enough money coming in, and that's it. It is actually not that complicated. And you need to get coaching and educated on what those percentages should be. Because if you don't know that, you're just going to be writing checks. Back to philanthropy. Each year, my wife and I put in several $100,000 into charity. I can't do that if I'm not making money. If there's no food on the table, how do you give back? And that, to me, is the importance of having financial integrity and knowing your numbers. Anybody know who Roger Bannister is? Oh, come on, that was a card. Oh, you're looking it up. Did you look it up?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So in 1952, he was a medical student. And as a medical student, he participated in the Olympics. And he was the first person to run a mile in under
4 minutes.
Under 4 minutes. Exactly. So, why am I talking to you about that? Because there's a phrase, and it's called the Bannister effect. And that means once you've heard something and you realize that it could be done, suddenly what was impossible now becomes possible. The bragging rights that I bring to the table is that $100 million have come through my hands. I got those are bragging rights. I also get that they're bragging rights to say I've treated 124,000 people that are unhoused. I am hoping that the Bannister effect lands with you. That you're like, well, if he could do it with a broken back, anybody could do it. I'm not the only guy in town that does that. There are lots and lots of people that do that, providing they get the education and the training and the coaching and the mentorship to actually make it happen. So let's do some reverse engineering here and figure out how we're going to have you guys make $1 million. Does that sound good? All right. So it's funny, everybody says yes to that. All right. So I presently work 3 days a week. I want to make $1 million. Sound good so far? You liking that? Yeah, okay, good. So, I don't want to work, well, 4 weeks. Let's just make it 10 days a month, okay? So 10 days a month, I got to take 2 months off, though, for the summer. So let's just work 100 days a year. So far, everybody good with that? Okay. 100 days into $1 million is how much money do I have to make in a given day? $10,000. Okay. What number sounds more palatable? $10,000 or $1 million bucks? To me, I would rather focus and be myopic on, I need $10,000. I need $10,000 today, and if I could do that consistently for 10 days a month, I'll have $1 million and I'll take 2 months off. And by the way, after this lecture, my wife and I are getting on a plane to go to Scotland for the month of August. Like, I'm not working 1 day in August.
But I'm treated. I'm treated.
You are. So, how do I make $10,000 in a day? And how do I make that a tolerable event? So let me give you some fees. Okay, I charge $3,200 for a crown. How many crowns do I need to do in a day? 3. Not rocket science. I charge $7,000 for Invisalign. Give me a combination of Invisalign and crowns. I need to do 1 of each. Okay. What do I need to do to actually do an Invisalign case? I need to say hello to the patient. My staff scans them, and I say, have a nice day. Should we call it 20 minutes because I had to talk to them about my kids first, all 9 of them? Okay, let's call it 20 minutes. All right. Now, nobody here has done a crown prep yet. Right. Do you know what the average time is when you are here in school to do a crown prep? Okay. I would like to see you graduate and do a crown prep in an hour. If you could do it in an hour, you call me up, I'll send you a Starbucks card. I don't think it's going to be an hour.
You're saying that's like quick? Yeah.
That's fantastically quick, right? But I'm pretty sure I was at several hours when I graduated. Okay? Do you know what my prep time now is for a crown?
5 minutes.
What'd you say?
5 minutes.
That is a card because it's the right answer. Don't look at the numbers. What'd you get?
10.
10. We got a $10 one. Okay. All right. Now, stay with me for a second. Okay? Shh. Stay with me. Yes?
I have a question about the crown. So if you're taking 5 minutes to do a crown, what would you say is the quality of the crown?
Okay. Her question is, if you're taking 5 minutes to do a crown, what is the quality of the crown?
Is it worth
Breathtaking. Okay? If my celebrities would allow me to, some of them would put their faces up there, breathtaking. A-list celebrities that you see every day on the television that are thrilled. 7 minutes of them having a bad day. Really. Okay? Ask me how many crowns I've done. Over 20,000. Okay? Now, that is a very important part of the secret sauce. anything that's worth doing well is worth really investing time for a deep practice. I assume the dean could do an extraction better than me. He's an oral surgeon. He's done more extractions than I have. That doesn't mean I won't do an extraction, but I don't have that deep practice. But I would also assert, and I haven't had the conversation, I could do a crown quicker than him. He probably has done very few. Very few. They're different entities. So I focus on Invisalign and crowns because I do them well, I could do them quickly, I could do them at a high level, and I get a fair price for it. There was a question over here? Yes?
Wouldn't these amounts contribute as fees for the practice, not necessarily what you take home?
Sure. So great question. These are fees for the practice, so there are some nuances there. And my goal is to generate $10,000 a day. Okay? So the numbers that I put up there are a little off because I don't always take 2 solid months off. Like this year I'm taking 1 solid month off, but I do work 3 days a week. Right? So the numbers are a little bit closer, but I'm probably closer to 12 days. I didn't want to do the math and make it sloppy that way. But great question. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
How do you justify charging people more than the average?
Great question. So no, it's actually a brilliant question. How do I justify charging more than the average? So why do you think patients are going to come to you? Why would they see you? There's going to be 400 of your colleagues in practice. I'm in a building with about 50 dentists. Why come to me? There's some very competent dentists there. I will give you a hint. It is actually not the quality of your work. I don't believe that patients go back home with a magnifying glass to see whether there are closed margins on my crown. They don't. They might go to another dentist, and those margins better be closed. Okay? But why are they going to you? Because here's what I say to them. You have a lot of choices. Hundreds and hundreds of dentists within walking distance of my practice. One of the reasons I think you should let me do the work is that I will give you time just for you. You will be the most important thing on my schedule when I'm seeing you. The quality of the work will be fantastic. The care that you get is fantastic. I've done a lot of these procedures. I'm very, very comfortable with it, and with a high degree of certainty, I could tell you it's going to be a great experience and a great outcome. And part of what we collect has helped over 100,000 patients who are unhoused get free dental care. So thank you for helping to clean up the community and help getting these unhoused people back into the workforce. Do you now see what the secret sauce is? Yeah. Which is one of the reasons why I believe philanthropy is not just good for the community at large, it's actually good for business. It is actually good for business. And I'm unabashed about that. I will scream that at the top of the mountain. Giving back is a two-way street. I get more satisfaction most of the time from the patients I treat for free who break down in tears telling me how their life has changed than an A-list celebrity that I charge more than $3,200 for. So making money is important for a variety of reasons, and giving back is equally as important. And you probably won't be charging $3,200, just change the math. My associate is charging $2,500. She's been out of school 5 years. She feels more comfortable with that. So she's got to do 4 crowns instead of 3. She takes 20 minutes to do a crown. But she's transitioning. Because when she started, she was at 45 minutes. All right. In order to know the numbers, you need to know how to read a profit and loss statement. Anybody have a headache looking at that? That's intentionally in the right font size to fit the slide. You're not supposed to be able to read it. Who here has an accounting background, undergrad? Really? You had an accounting background? You had a business background. Okay, now this is not unusual. Roughly 400 people, 1 out of 400. And you're supposed to go into business for yourself? Do you see there's a missing here? 80% of you are going to go into business for yourself and don't know what this is or how to read it. So here's a solution. There's a company out there that takes your profit and loss statement and turns it into this profit and loss statement. So let's go through it. Number of patients, production, income, overhead, target, with the percentages that I hit with the industry average, and if it's in red, I'm over, and if it's in black, I'm under. And then it gives me a score. The cheat sheet below got cut off intentionally because it was boring. Anything under a 4, you're flying high and you're profitable. So let's take a look. When was this? Do I have a month written on here? May. Okay, so this was a fairly recent one. So, few questions. What's the difference between production and collection? Yes, sir.
Production is what your standard price is, and that's how much you would charge, and then collection is what the insurance company is. You're collecting from the insurance company.
Not correct, because I don't take insurance. Yes.
Collection is the money that you collected that day, and production is how much your services.
Yeah, I think that's a card. Come on up. She said production is the amount of dentistry you've actually done. When I'm done drilling a crown, it goes on the computer as production. I produced $3,200. If you ran a report, it would show that. Until the person pays, there's no collection. Oh, you could see the numbers. Oh, we're gonna have to do it. Oh, we're gonna mix it up. Okay. 20. All right. Nice. Okay, so let's say you come in for a crown. When you're in the chair, I do the work. I hand the slip to my front desk. It enters, I did a crown, my production goes up $3,200, okay? 5 minutes later, you get to the front desk, you hand them a credit card, your credit card goes through for $3,200, collection now gets registered at $3,200. Production is what you produce, collection is the amount of money you receive. Fair enough? Why is it that my collection is higher than my production?
Because that's from your associates as well that comes in from collection.
Well, it's not just from the associates. This is from the entire practice, right? But there's more money in the account than dentistry that was done. That's what that number tells me. We're at 111% of collection.
Are patients paying up front for service?
Patients are paying up front. How nice is that? So, if you're not collecting up front, or if you're not collecting in full for the procedure at the time of the procedure, I assert you're no longer a dentist, you're now a bank. Banks loan money, right? If you do work and somebody doesn't pay, you're loaning money. So if somebody cannot pay the bill, I have financing, third-party financing that I use. That means somebody else is loaning them the money, I'm getting paid in full, and they will make payments to them. Similar to any kind of loan. I am not in the business of loaning money. It's not my field, not my expertise. I don't know it. Do you know what percentage I play for in terms of collection? This happened to be an extraordinary month that I printed. But at the end of the year, I'm looking for 99% or higher collection. I want everything that I did to be collected. Does that sound reasonable? I have seen practices where their collection ratio is like 80%. I go, why don't you just discount your fees 80%? I mean, 20% is being thrown away, and if profitability is typically 0 to 5%, how do you throw away 20%? Like to me, that just does not make sense. So then I could take a look and I could say, okay, my front office staff was at 17.8%. The target should be 15. I'm off by a little bit. I don't lose too much sleep over that. I want my staff to be paid well. I don't want them leaving. So being off by a few percentages, I could deal with. Okay? But look at this number that got highlighted right here. What is that? What is this? That's what I made because I own a practice and I legally have the practice pay for certain things that you don't get paid for if you're a W-2 employee. So we're going to speak to that in just a second. Who knows what EBITDA is? Yes, sir.
Before the income taxes, depreciation.
You're close.
Interest.
Earning before interest, tax, depreciation, and appreciation. That is an accounting word. It's a big mouthful. What does it mean? This number tells you, or buyer of your practice, what your practice is worth. It tells you the health of your practice. So let's have a quick conversation about owning a practice and being an employee. And I'm telling you up front that I'm not making an assertion that one is right or wrong. I've had a lot of associates over the years who have told me, I'm a full-time mom, I want to start at 10 o'clock because I want to take my kid to school, I want to leave at 4 o'clock, and I don't want to take call. Great, thank you. Now I know what I'm getting. And I want a check, and that check I'm going to write, and taxes are going to be taken out, and you get to keep everything that's in that check. Is there anybody here that's never received a check for working on a job where the taxes have been taken out? Does everybody have had a job at some point? Have you ever noticed they say, we're going to start you at $10 an hour, you work 10 hours, you're expecting a $100 check, and you get the check and it's $75? You go, where'd the rest go? Where did the rest go? Taxes. So this is important. I'm only going to spend a moment on it because there's a whole course on this. If you're an employee, you're going to get a W-2. All the taxes are taken off, and you can't write anything off. What does that say on my shirt sleeve? Those are my initials. Yeah? Do you know why my initials are on my shirt? Because this is a write-off. I'm not kidding you. This shirt was a write-off. Right? You're wearing scrubs. If you were buying scrubs for your practice, would you be able to write off the scrubs? It's a uniform. This is a uniform. It's got my name on it. It's got my logo on it. I went so far as to one of my cars putting the logo on the mats, wrote off the car. I'm not kidding. Right? This is not because I'm playing with fire. This is because the tax code is written out in such a way where it says if you are a owner of a business, we're going to give you huge tax breaks because we want you to hire W-2 employees. And that's one of the reasons 80% of us dentists own their own practice. So, how do you determine what you're going to buy or sell a practice for? My practice does $3 million. A private practice that does not take insurance sells for somewhere between 90 to 100% of the prior year's gross. Easy math, right? EBITDA. The EBITDA on my practice is about $750,000. That's the number that after all the expenses are taken out. Earnings before interest, tax, before all of that. A private practice that doesn't take insurance sells for 4 to 5 times EBITDA. we're back to $3 million. So I know what I could sell my practice for. So when you're ready to buy a practice, you're going to want to know these two numbers, the prior year gross and what the EBITDA is. And the EBITDA is something that you have to print that first nasty profit and loss statement, give it to an accountant, have that accountant play with it, and tell you what the number is. There is 7-8 billion people on the planet, right? It is crucial that you find the right person to partner with. I don't care whether you're talking about in business or as a significant other. Now, when my wife and I met in the dorms literally around the corner, I had no clue. Not at the first date, but by the third date I knew. And I'm very fortunate that literally in a few days we're going to celebrate our 36th anniversary. And I cannot tell you how absolutely crucial it is to make sure that you're with the right person in business and in life. And it's with that that I have the distinct pleasure of introducing you to my wife, Dr. Breyer Flicker Grossman, who's going to share with you something. I would hold that.
I feel like you're pinning me.
Hi, everybody. It was a pleasure to meet a lot of you before we started today. And if you want more books signed, I would be happy to do that later. Give me 1 second to get set here. And I need you, Jay.
Just hold on to it for 5 minutes.
Brian. I make sounds.
Audio for
That's a great idea.
So, Dr. J likes to ask questions, so do I. And one of the things that he said in the very first slide was that this is about philanthropy. Does anybody know what philanthropy actually means? I'll take some hands, and if somebody gets it right, Dr. J will give you a cup.
Again.
This is what I do with the kids. If you're good, I will give you a cup. Although the trip is on me. It's his birthday, it was his birthday and our anniversary, so it's my gift to him, because I'm a working mama. Yeah?
Loving humanity.
Close. Literally, it's, you got it, but yes, lover of man. So phila comes from love, anthropy, man. So one of the things we're talking about in the association to philanthropy is giving to others for free. So when you hear about Homeless Not Toothless, HNT, our organization, and how much money we've given and what we do, there's this idea that we just give bottomlessly. And what Jay has been talking about is the importance of taking care of oneself so that you have ample to give away, so that there's a desire for abundance in all areas of one's life, that we have abundance within our bodies, our minds, spiritually, in our relationships, financially, and that we then have the wherewithal to be able to and want to give away. So philanthropy, I would submit, is not just about loving others or giving to others. We're included in that. It's so important to take care of oneself. And when you've done that, there's a capacity or a desire, even a passion, and I think you could hear it when Jay was speaking, to give back. And it's really, really important. When I first started dating Jay, I thought, there's no way I'm going to date a poor dental student. I was here from California. I was eager to get back home. The social work program was 2 years, and I thought, I'm going to finish, I'm going to go back home, I'm going to get myself set up there. I don't want to get in any serious relationships here. And so I was dating a lot of people, and they were pretty successful, and we would go out, and we had a great time. He comes along and wants to go out with me. Little did I know he had been observing my aerobics class, and at that point, he wasn't very respectful of his 3 Ps, and his body was not well tended to, and so he wouldn't take my aerobics class because he thought he'd faint, and then I would lose respect for him. This is his, again, we're talking a lot about stories today. It's a particular filter we look at and we listen to the world through. His filter was, I'm going to go take this girl's class, I'm going to pass out, and she's not going to want to go out with me. The other piece was he was also living with somebody who took my class, a woman who had a crush on him and was like, I don't want you to meet him because if you do, you're going to get married. Another story, another day. If you have my book, it's in there. So he is stalking me virtually, watching me teach. And it's only when I wind up at his room, his apartment, because he's supposed to be out studying for a root canal test, I think. And I'm thinking, there's just no way. When Cindy, his roommate, said, you guys would fall in love, you would get married, you should never meet. I said, don't worry. I don't want to go out with a dentist. Dentists are sadists, they have a high degree of depression. I don't want to go out with them. So needless to say, I'm at his apartment, and he winds up coming home. And he sees me, and he thinks he's at the wrong apartment, and that he's been daydreaming about me, that he's actually come to my room, which is a few floors below his. And he actually walked out of the room and looked at the door, realized it was the right room, and came back in. And I said to him, hi, I'm Breyer. And he said, hi, I know. That was so weird. And he introduced himself, and we were kind of up and running. But on one of our first dates, he was on call, and he had treated someone, I think it was just a filling. And before we went to dinner, he said, I've got to make a phone call. And I said, well, who are you calling? He said, I've got to call the patient to make sure they're okay. I had to take a moment, because I don't think my dentist ever called me after I had a filling to see if I was okay. In fact, I knew he hadn't. I don't think I had had a doctor at that point other than my father, who before he became a psychoanalyst was a general practitioner. And he always asked if I was okay, but that was my dad. I think he did that with others also. And he also admonished me, you can marry just about anybody, but dentists, their profession's a little boring, they tend to be depressed. So I kind of had that in the background. He was talking about stories he had. We don't talk about sex, we don't talk about politics, we don't talk about money. And I will tell you that a lot of people who come to see me, the major issues are not really politics driven, but they are sexually driven and they are money driven. And I think that has a lot to do with what the stories are that we come with. And when we can realize that we're listening through a particular filter that doesn't necessarily empower us or take us to where we want to go, whatever the goal is, we can start to take control and alter those stories. Put our eyes on the goals that we want. For those of you who I had the opportunity to sign my book for, I said to you, the instructions are the title of the book, Love, Laugh, Be. And somebody said to me, I don't see you right now, but you said, shouldn't it be live, laugh, love? And I said, no, because this is the instruction to live. This is about, it's not about being Pollyanna-ish, it's including your feelings. If something horrible happens, it's about being able to cry. It's about being able to feel your fear and think about it and deal with it. But it's also about being able to set a time limit and get on your feet and continue to be, and continue to love, and continue to laugh. Because when you can do that, you keep growing and you have the experience of abundance. And this is what we're talking about today, how to have it all with freedom and ease. So I hope that after today's lecture, if you're interested, I'll be back out in the lobby. I'm happy to sign more books and answer questions. I know some people wanted to speak to me. But when you take care of your being, you take care of your body, your behavior will then follow. Jay talks a lot about behavior, what you have to do as a dentist, what you have to do for your finances, what you have to do personally. And that's really important. So before he wrote his book, I published Love, Laugh, Be a few years ago. And within that, there were the 3 B's. There were the 3 B's and the 3 T's. And we talk about handling everything from the neck up. But what we've realized is we really handle the whole being. So if you want to have behavior that's meaningful, a lot of you, as I was signing your books, you were talking about being stressed, you're excited to be here, you don't know what to expect. There are days that's going to be really hard. And stress is another story and another conversation. And if you can take care of your body and create a routine, get up in the morning. I get up every day between 5 and 5:30 a.m. I have a very busy psychoanalytic practice. I'm a doctor of psychoanalysis. I get up between 5 and 5:30 so I can start at 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning with patients. I work 4 days a week. And when I wake up, I meditate for 10 minutes. There's a great book by Hal Elrod called The Miracle Morning. I really recommend it. I meditate for 10 minutes. I consider my affirmations and goals, visions for my life for 10 minutes. I write in a journal for 10 minutes. I exercise, usually for an hour. My son is my personal trainer. I live in the hills. I go out and I hike, I do yoga, I weight lift. Every day, I go in my sauna, I take a cold plunge, I shower, and I start my day. Every day. It's like brushing your teeth. Every day. So I recommend that if you want to have all the stuff that Dr. J is talking about, have a successful business, be able to have a successful philanthropy, you need to take care of your body. You need to take care of your being, thinking, the meditating, the goal setting, the knowing your numbers, and the behavior will follow. A couple of other notes and then I'm going to finish. One is, please remember, it took Jay hours and hours to do crowns in the beginning of his career. When he joined the military and a boat would come in and his superior officer would say, okay, we got to move this along. And he'd still be hours into doing the crown. He's like, Grossman, you got to snap this up. We got people to take care of. So it took him a long, long time. He does my crowns. He does beautiful dentistry. And he does it impeccably. And like he said, the care that you get, if you look at your patients and you don't just see a mouth, but know they have the same struggles as you, maybe more, maybe less. They need your love, they need your concern. Listening is important. So listen to what they have to say. Who are you? Introduce yourselves. Show your concern. And when you have fulfilled on some of the things I've talked about, loving yourself and taking care of yourself, when you show up every day for your patients, you're going to look at them and be really genuinely interested to listen. And they will only have a minute or two to talk, because then you're going to say, okay, open wide, and then you better get really good at telling stories. Thank you guys very much. I'm going to bring back the day back up.
You got a card for him?
Yeah, here. You give him one. Just give him one.
Ah. Oh, you gotta give him. Not that one is better than the other.
I'll get you.
So sorry.
Who here played collegiate sports? What sport did you play? Lacrosse. How many coaches did you have? 5 coaches. You in a relationship right now?
I am.
Do you have any coaches for the relationship? Yeah.
On paper.
Yeah. Do you feel that being at this university, number 3 in the country, with the heavy schedule and didactics, cost, living in the city, has any level of stress that it's imparting on your body?
Definitely.
Definitely. Would you agree that most people in the class would probably say the same thing?
100%.
Yeah. Have you ever thought about a coach to help you with the stress?
No.
Yeah. The reason that I bring up this picture, and I appreciate you volunteering this, I usually find there's a few people in a dental school that played collegiate sports, but obviously not as heavy as it would be perhaps in some other businesses. But in the sports analogy, we all understand the purpose of coaches, multiple coaches. I don't even know if I could list how many coaches and mentors I have in my life. I mean, I still get coached on the business of dentistry, and I teach it. I still get coached on my relationship. I still get coached on nutrition. And the purpose that I want you guys to hear in this slide is that why is it that we're so open to having coaches and mentors in the field of sports, but not necessarily in the field that are important to us, the pillars. So I throw that out there so that hopefully you could all start looking at what is it going to take, to have a car collection, to have a real estate portfolio, to have successful relationships, and so forth. Fun fact, this is what I affectionately call my car condo. It's a condominium. It's a condominium, a 2,500 square foot condominium that sleeps cars. And it's a piece of real estate. And if you notice at the top, do you see the desk up there? So this is 4 miles from my house, and every morning I come here, I make a cup of coffee, I go on my computer, I do some expert work, I bill out for it to this address, and then I drive to my office. Now there's a reason that I do that, because the IRS, the law, is that you cannot write off your travel between your home and your first job. But you can from your first job to your second job. So the first 4 miles is on me. The next 40 miles is on the IRS. And I get to polish a fender every day. Yeah, it's crazy, right? But that's just the way it works. All right. I am going to jump into a conversation about where money can be invested. Now, shh. This is my interpretation of investments. I'm not saying it's the truth. I have yet to find somebody that will challenge this. If it happens in this group, I think I have a card left. I got a few left. So I believe that these are the 4 buckets that money could go to if you want to invest it. We all know about real estate. Some of the most wealthiest people in the world have made their money on real estate. Huge fan, huge fan. We all know about the stock market. Also huge fan. And I'm going to actually give you a stock tip. It's done well for me, and it's very simple. We all know about business, and 80% of you are going to be in that field. That could be any business. I'm going to spend less time on the fourth topic. These are insurance vehicles that are very sophisticated, geared towards high net worth individuals that actually give you a return. Let's take a look at this property. This is one of our houses that we own in Malibu. Okay? I am going to teach you a formula that perhaps very few of you know. So let me start by asking this question. Who knows what a cap rate is? CAP, cap rate. Okay, so if nobody knows, then I get to fulfill on my promise of delivering something that I promised nobody would know. Okay, this is one of the most important formulas for knowing whether to invest in real estate. Okay, so CAP is short for capitalization, which is a big fat fancy word for what the return is, percentage-wise. Why do they have a specialized term? Why do we have specialized terms? Every field has specialized terms, right? When you're a third-year student, you're going to talk about a DOL, onlay, and everybody in the class is going to know what it's about. Nobody that's outside of dentistry is going to know what that's about. They're specialized terms. So here's how you determine what a cap rate is. So first, let me tell you what the magic number is. A piece of real estate that is earning at least a 4 cap or higher, that means 4% or higher, is considered a solid, decent investment. That means each year you're going to get at least 4% back. And for real estate, if you're getting 4, 5, 6% back every single year, good investment. With me so far? Here's the formula for figuring out cap rate. You take the monthly income, you subtract the monthly costs. All costs except the mortgage. A little nuance there. You multiply that by 12, so now you have the net yearly income for the property with the costs already taken out, except mortgage. And you divide that number by the value of the property. Wow. So we're going to make this super fun. Who here hates math? Who hates math? Your hand went up, went back down. You don't want to participate. I'm thinking about calling on you. It's worth a card. Okay. Do you have a phone with a calculator? Wonderful. Stand up for me in your spot. This will be painless, I promise you. All right. Open your calculator. So this property rents out on Airbnb. Okay? So you could rent it for a week. It brings in $25,000 a month, but the costs are $4,000 a month. It's utilities, gardening, stuff like that. Can you do that number in your head?
Yeah.
We're at what? 21,000. Right. Very good. That's good. So do 21,000 times 12 months. So this property generates how much money a year? 252,000. So this property brings in $250,000, right? Now, the property, if I sold it, is valued at $3 million. So take that number and divide it by 3 million. And what do you get?
0.084.
Okay, now it's a percentage. So now move the decimal over 2. It's 8.4. So that this is an 8.4 cap. 8.4%. Now, you don't particularly like math. How difficult was that?
Not too bad.
You can handle that, right? You get a card. Oh, there's a 5 and a 10. 5 and a 10. Now, why is that number important and what does it mean? That means this property gives us a return each year of 8.4%. Oh, the last one's a 10. All right. Now, why is that important for me to know? If I sold this property, $3 million would come in, then the government would say what? Taxes. $1.5 million would come in, right? And then I'd have to take that and invest it in something else. If the percentage comes in lower than 4, there are plenty of other things I could invest it in. So knowing the cap rate is crucial for me to make a decision. So this morning, we were going through all of our properties, and we have a property in Hawaii. And although the property has constantly brought in money, and we own it, so there's no mortgage on it, it's giving us a 2.4 cap. And I said to my wife, we're building another house in a state that we own. We have a very large property. We want multiple homes on it, so I could have all 9 of my kids there. This is a true story. And this morning, I looked at that number, 2.4, and I said, sell it. Because I could do more with that cash in other vehicles, such as enhancing one of my other properties. Okay? The other advantage of this being a rental property is last year the pool had to be redone, the roof had to be redone, I put solar on the property, and the driveway needed to be redone. It was a $200,000 expense. When you own a property, that's not a rental, the costs that come in, that $200,000 cost, you put on the side until you sell it. What? Sometimes you don't sell a property for 20 years. When it's a rental, you get to write off the expense that year. So I don't show any income coming in for this property because the income all went to repairs, but now the value of the house went up because it's now a repaired house. So that's one of the advantages of real estate. Cap rate, super duper important.
Maybe you can do it, what, our next attendance check?
Absolutely. Attendance.
The code is 8067. 8067.
This ends at 3:50?
Yes, but we have the room for some.
Do you guys have anything after this? If we go a few minutes longer, are we good? Beautiful. All right. Yes?
So you were saying the 2.4 cap wasn't worth your while, like in terms of the profitability you could do with the money.
Correct.
What you meant when you said earlier that you limited your need assistance spending power, even though there was a sale, buy one, get one free, if you have the space to store it and it's not going to expire,
right? Because
you could use that money for something more profitable?
That's correct. Okay, this is a brilliant question. So the question was, why do I keep the percentage of my expenses in those very defined areas? Like, why do I tell my assistant not to spend more money in supplies? So if there's a sale on a product, on something, let's say, doesn't expire, and I have the room to store it, 2 very, very important parts, right? I would want her to come to me and say, I really want to buy an extra case of gloves because they're a ridiculous price, which is why I look over a 3-month period of time to see what her stats are, because sometimes 1 month she might go over, she'll make up for the next month. But ultimately, I am committed to putting at least 10% of the revenue that comes in into profit, right? And if I let those percentages get fat, I lose 1-2% here, 1-2% there, profit's gone. I'm looking at a 10 to 15% profit that I'm looking at taking out. It's not a huge number. But when you take the 10% profit plus 20-30% profit on the entire practice from what the associates do, plus what the IRS says I'm legally able to run through my practice. Suits, cars, right? Those are big perks. And the end of the year, it's like, oh, owning the practice made me $1 million this year. Now, it might not be $1 million in income, but if $500,000 is being paid by the practice for travel and continuing education and trips and so forth, because the owners of the practice believe that this is a valid expense. Do you want to guess who the owners of the practice are?